Howdy, folks. Happy Monday. It's actually not raining in Buffalo, which is a beautiful thing. We have lots of stuff to discuss on the ice and off the ice with the playoff series, but we're going to start with the pre-show. Kevin has something, and then Russ has something. Go ahead, Kevin.
Well, I wanted to get your thoughts on this because I know we all kind of go through this, and I thought about this today. Anybody who goes to the doctor regularly, there's always one complaint. Your appointment's at 8:50. That's what mine was this morning. And they bring you in, and you're getting in that little room at 8:40. And, usually around 9:30 or so, the doctor comes in. And, people get irritated over that. Fortunately, I had plenty of time before my 1 o'clock appointment here. But I started to think about it, and I went and looked on to see if I was right about this and started reading about comments. And what are the two comments that people, when they criticize the doctor, they criticize most? One, it's they're always late on their appointments. The doctor never comes when he sees them. But their other complaint is the doctor doesn't spend enough time with me.
Right.
So what's it going to be? You got to make up your mind, in my opinion. Do you want them to spend more time with you? Because if they do, like my doctor spent a lot of time with me today. And I'm thinking, you've just made yourself late for 6 people who come after me,
Right.
Because, they have like 4 people that they're supposed to see at the same time, more or less. They're trying to squeeze 30 people into a day or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And, so I guess I'm on the side of I'd rather see my doctor for 11 minutes instead of 90 seconds.
Yeah,
a bit late. But I wondered how people thought about that.
That's
because
how I feel.
Yeah, it's such a contradiction.
I don't know I don't know if I want to see them for 11 minutes, because if it's 11 minutes, they're usually scolding me for something, like my hemoglobin A1C or my blood sugar level or something like that. But okay, I'm somebody who's notoriously prompt. And if I expect everybody else to be notoriously prompt. So if I'm supposed to be there at 12:40, at 12:41, I want the doctor to be in the office, and I want to get out of there before 1. But it's always, you get put in the room, and then you're sitting in there for 15 minutes, twiddling your thumbs, and you wish you had your headphones so you could listen to music or something. And then, it's like, all of a sudden, and you're waiting for any little knock at the door to think that the doctor's coming in, and then it turns out somebody banged up against the wall or something. It's just, it's like, let's go here. Let's get it going.
Yeah. But the thing, there's actually, first you hear them in the next room. Right. You hear through the wall, and you hear them, and there's going on there, and then there's the rustling of papers because they pull out your chart, and right then is the time when they're considering your life for that 30 seconds that they read that. They go, oh yeah, that's Kevin Allen, he's got this and this going on, and now we'll go in, and of course they act like they've have followed your case. They studied the night before. They're all ready to go. But it's really been in that 30 seconds, from the time they look at the papers. But, ideally, I think what you're saying is, Mike, you want them to see 3 patients an hour and give you 10 minutes and then make sure that you get in and out of there, promptly. So, That's first world problem.
I don't think it's too much to expect, but maybe I'm wrong. But
it'd be impossible for them to make 6-figure salaries if they're going to see 3.
That's a whole other. That's a whole other discussion for another day.
Well, like I always said, my daughter had to have major surgery when she was very young, and I ended up and her doctor's name. I shouldn't say his name, but anyway. He had a vanity license plate, and when I was going through, he was driving a Porsche, and that was my daughter's surgeon. And my wife, made some comment about that, and I said, I want my doctor to be driving the best car known to man, because that means he's pretty good if he's making a lot of money. So
yeah, if he's driving an old station wagon, you're in trouble.
No, that's exactly right. Well, it's the same thing. Like. Because I've had issues with my family, and we've spent a lot of time at hospitals. You also don't want to deal with doctors on the weekend, because nobody who's good has to work on the weekend. The real good doctors are working Monday through Friday.
Well, I was gonna say, or even on Fridays, like if if you have a doctor's appointment on Friday at 2 p.m., I bet you half the time they say, "Oh, can we reschedule that?" Because probably the doctor won't golf it. But anyway.
Well, there's something, that's a generalization because all doctors have to spend a rotation weekend when they're on call, and if you get lucky, you get that that person on the right time. But anyway, I don't know how I got off in this, but only because I went to the doctor and I was thinking about today about what we'd rather have. But
we can relate.
Well, I'll just say this: I went because I'm having a shoulder issue. I went for another round of physical therapy, and if you want to enjoy 45 minutes of pain, that's what physical therapy is. Because they're bending your shoulder in all different contortions in all different places. And it's like, okay, lean up against the wall here and basically push your shoulder until it's painful. It's like, I don't want pain. Do you understand that? It's like,
yeah.
But that's.
But and I know you didn't watch Tiger Woods, but if you watched Tiger Woods on the first day when he was trying to make the cut, from the first time we watched him play, he can get lower now on that leg to read the putts. And I know my son is an occupational therapist, so I know a little bit about it. And I was telling my wife that's therapy right there. Just the progress he's made to get lower, and you got to go through that pain to get better. That's as simple as that. So.
All right, so quick moment. Wanted to acknowledge the passing of Joe Pignitano. He's an old Brooklyn guy that played for the Brooklyn Dodgers and then was the Mets pitching coach from 68 to 81. So he was the bullpen coach, rather, not pitching coach. He was the bullpen coach. He was there for their World Series. He was there for their second World Series. He also planted a really nice vegetable garden at Shea Stadium that lasted for many, many years and produced a lot of vegetables.
The tomatoes in the bullpen.
Yep. That was Joe Pignitano. But I was at an event once, and that's where the sign ball is behind me. He with a bunch of other Mets, and I wanted to ask him. I said, I've always been dying to know, why didn't Nolan Ryan really work out in New York? What was the real reason? Because the bullpen coach would know, because he would spend a lot of times with the pitchers and have conversations. And he told me, he said, and this took like 10 minutes to tell me, but I'll give a quick synopsis. And it was basically like he said, end of the day, he didn't fit in New York. That's really what it was. He was an uncomfortable guy in a big city, and that was never going to work out. And I was just like, this is great, because this is a question I had all through my childhood, collecting baseball cards, seeing Nolan Ryan get 383 strikeouts for another team, all those things. And, and he actually had a lot of deep thoughts that day, and really stuff that, he had mentioned about the team and the sport that, you wouldn't get at a baseball card signing. You would get at an event like this where they served like a dinner. So I was appreciative that I ran into him just the one time in my life. And I just want to say, it's too bad he's gone. I think he's 91, something like that.
And wasn't Ryan primarily a reliever with the Mets? I mean, he didn't.
Well, he was a starter, and then they threw him in the pen for the World Series because they had such a good starting staff. They had Gary Gentry, who was a young pitcher that took that spot. And so the problem with Ryan was back then they didn't want to deal with his walks. So that would drive the Mets crazy. So in the bullpen, they could sort of limit the damage, and he used his fastball more, and it worked out better for a short time.
All right, let's get started. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Monday, May 23rd, 2022.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
Kevin Allen from HockeyBuzz.
And I'm Michael Lagello, and this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. All right, let's start with start with in the East and work our way west. The Tampa Bay Lightning have taken a stranglehold on their best of 7 series with Florida. They won a heartbreaking, soul crushing. They won over Florida 2-1 on a goal with I think it was 3 seconds left on Friday, and then Sunday at home they opened up a can of whoop ass on the Panthers, winning 5-1. And Kev, everybody is looking at the President's Trophy winner and wondering now whether they were a paper tiger or whether Tampa Bay is as good as they're playing right now. And I would vote for the latter rather than the former.
Yeah, I mean, and this is just hockey. Like it's, we always talk about that it's a different season, and it is. There's no explanation for why a team that lived on the power play that averaged 4 goals or better than 4 goals per game suddenly can't score on the power play. There's really no reason for it. They didn't suddenly get terrible on the power play. And, these things just happens. And, a lot of it is to do with the fact that Tampa Bay Lightning certainly have a advanced understanding of what it takes to win in the postseason. They're able to transform themselves. I remember when I first started covering the league, the Edmonton Oilers were in their heyday, and they won mostly on the strength of their offense. But one thing about the Oilers is, come playoff time, they had a big defense. Like their guys, Kevin Lowe and Randy Gregg and all those guys, they were all big guys, and they knew how to clamp down. They knew how to play differently, kind of in the postseason. They had an understanding of it, and that still goes on today. The Lightning know what's required and how they need to play in order to be successful, and they're able to do it. Now, we've talked before on previous shows about, to be able to flick a switch and, whether that can actually be done. Well, this year, the Tampa Bay Lightning is showing you can do that, because we all watched them. They performed, I would say, subpar over the last 20 games of the season. They were not the same team. I didn't even think they looked like the same team in the first round. They won that round. They survived. But they didn't say it. But in this round, they look more like the
Well, mention the first round, otherwise it's going to be.
No. I'm glad Kevin brought this up, because I tweeted this out, and apparently I inflamed a bunch of hatred from Leafs Nation, because I said, don't misread, what Tampa Bay is doing to Florida here as a commentary on the Leafs, because the Leafs had opportunities. They had opportunities in that series twice to take control. After winning game 1, they played terribly in game 2. After winning game 3, they played terribly in game 4. They had the lead in game 6. They gave Tampa enough time to find out that they had to play like Tampa to beat them, and then in the end they beat them. And Leaf fans are, you're making excuses, penalties, this and that, blah blah blah. No, just win. If you don't win, you can't say it was the refs or it was this or it was that. Tampa Bay's not relying on excuses. They just go out and friggin' win. And that's what they did.
There is no formula. Like we all act like, hey, it's different in the playoffs and you can't score. No, there are games you can score. And actually, just to give an example, I think Gerard Gallant said it really well yesterday in his postgame. Because somebody's like, well, why isn't this offense like this all the time for the Rangers? And he goes, because some games it's just not there. Some games, the way the matchup is, there is not going to be any offense, and it's going to be a tight game. And he goes, other games, you see your offense kick in, and you kind of ride the wave. But he said, you don't know, and it's game to game that way, and there really is no way of figuring that out. And I agree with him. I think it's more random now than it's ever been.
Well, the funny thing is, just looking at Florida for a second, okay, we sort of glossed over the fact that maybe in a way they should have lost to Washington. Washington was up 2-1 in the series. They were up 2-1 late in the third period in game 4. If they would have won that game, they would have been up 3-1 in the series. Florida ties it, wins in overtime. Washington was leading game 5 3-0. Florida comes back and wins game 5. They were really behind the 8 ball a couple times in that series, and because Washington, I think, is not as good a team and is flawed, and maybe their goaltending isn't that great, Florida was able to overcome that. But against Tampa, Kev, you can't overcome things like that. Bobrovsky's played okay, but you're playing up against Vasilevsky, and if you only play okay, you're not going to win.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That Washington could have won that series, and and what Russ said is certainly true. There's a randomness about hockey playoffs that's there's just no understanding it. It just happens, and we always make the mistake of once a playoff series is over, is to assign blame to the losing team, and sometimes it's just a happening, and I say it all the time, but it's so true. you replay that series 24 hours after it's over, you'll get a completely different outcome, and it'll look much different. Like just like you're saying, you don't necessarily know how your offense is going to look. You don't know how your goaltending is going to look, how your defense, mistakes, events. I watched today. I saw a goal go in off a linesman's foot. It was eventually waved off on a replay. But it just reminds me that so many weird things happened in the course of the game. And, we see it all the time in the power play. One of the strategies is just get it toward the net and maybe it'll hit someone. Like that. That's a strategy. And you just don't know which way that the puck's going to carry them from time to time. And those kind of goals change the outcome of games and series. So
the only reason I felt like Washington wasn't going to win their series with Florida was because they knew they were having trouble scoring, so they decided to beat that heavy team and try and pound them, and it wasn't going to work. Like Florida's offense is too good for that, and that's the reason I felt like they weren't going to win that series, because they were trying to play a game that wasn't really their game. But they knew that was probably their best chance. At some point, they probably looked at it and said, this is our best chance to beat these guys, and it almost was.
Yeah. So, that series is 3-0, and I believe Game 4 is tonight, which I don't know whose advantage that is to play, back to back in Tampa.
I would play Spencer Knight in there. I would not, just because they need a change. Like Bob hasn't done anything wrong, but maybe Spencer Knight in there fouls him up.
Last year it gave him a spark when they were down. I think they were down 3-0.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would put him in.
I'm with Russ too. I would change the goaltending, just like you do. Like if somebody gives up 3 quick goals, and it's really usually is not anything to do with the goaltender.
You're not going to win with Bob in there anyhow. Like you pretty much know that now.
Right.
Yep. Okay. So, 2 games on the weekend, and this entire series has been very similar. The games have been very similar, very tight. Very close checking. The first game of Rangers Hurricanes was a 2-1 overtime game. Aho scores late in the third period, and then the Ian Cole goal that goes off Lindgren's stick. Game 2 was 2-0. It was 1-0 most of the game after Brendan Smith had scored on Aho with the empty netter. Shesterkin has been unbelievable in this entire series, and it goes back to MSG, Russ, and you were there yesterday. They win 3-1. And I'll talk about the game first and then the extracurricular stuff after.
It's funny. As far as the game, the crowd was really into it. It was nice to see Wayne Gretzky there with Janet. That's just like, I don't care if you're a media member, whatever. It's always going to be a thrill if Wayne Gretzky's in the building for a hockey game you're watching too. Like, that's just the way it is. That's the way I always feel. So, you had this good feel about it. What was interesting about this game was Gallant broke up the kid line. He broke up all the lines to start the game. He eventually explained that by just saying, he felt like he could get here's what he didn't say. I'm going to give you what Gallant didn't say. Remember when I kept saying the Rangers need to go up on this team 2-0, because I feel like if they do, it's going to change the complexion of these games. They tried to do it the game before. They couldn't do it. This game, he had to make changes, but they did it. And that did change the complexion. And I know Carolina scored a squeaker of a goal that went through Shesterkin by Jordan Stahl shortly after. But after that, Carolina really didn't put up that much of an offensive attack. And then the Rangers did go back to the kid line because they are their best forechecking line. They did get a couple of great chances, one with Kakko that Ronta made a really good save on. And they're also a good puck possession team who could take the time off the clock. So what's interesting here is Brindamore has made very few adjustments. Gallant has made all the adjustments because, look, like Mike said, one bad bounce, it goes off of Lindgren's stick. That's a freaky loss. Brendan Smith getting your shorthanded goal is an unexpected thing. So it's the playoffs. Weird things happen. But I did say I was asked by my wife, why are you covering game 3? And I said the reason is I feel like if they could win this game a certain way, it could turn the tide of the series. I feel like this is the pivotal game for the series. And now I feel that way. I felt that way before I went there, saw how they won. And this isn't to say Carolina's not going to win another game. But I do feel like the Rangers now have a little bit more figured out about Carolina than Carolina has figured out them.
Yeah, and Kev, the funny thing is that, like people like me thought the key to this series would be the goaltending advantage that the Rangers had with Shesterkin over Ranta. Ranta was fantastic yesterday. I thought he made a whole, I don't think he was really responsible.
He's not a reason they lost.
He's no, not at all.
No.
So I mean, obviously Carolina's leading in the series, but now Carolina is 0-4 on the road in the playoffs. They've lost every road game, 3 to Boston and now 1 to the Rangers. That's if you're going to win the Stanley Cup, you got to win on the road.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. And I agree with everything that's been said with regard to how fortunate the Hurricanes have been, in the postseason thus far. Saying all that, like, to me, the key player for the Rangers is Shesterkin. When he's on top of his game, they've got enough talent that they can take advantage of that, and that's certainly been the case. But I think we've kind of wondered about Carolina, just coming into the playoffs, and they've managed to kind of get through. But now they're going to be tested. I would disagree with Russ. Just I've always felt that Game 4 is always the game that tells the story, because it's always the difference between 3-1 and 2-2, and 3-1 and 2-2 is a big difference. And statistics show that, just like what Russ is saying about a 2-goal lead. You look at the playoff statistics historically, and teams that take a 2-goal lead, and they win just an astronomical amount of time in games. Like, it feels like there's always, like, probably this year's been a little bit different, but it feels like there's been a lot of people erase 2-goal leads. But historically, it doesn't happen all that much. I think the winning percentage is 75 or 80%. Winning those games. So it's so important to get off to those, 2-goal leads, because teams don't come from behind on 2 goals as often as we think they do.
And before we go off on a tangent on the post game, Mike, I wanted to mention one thing in the interviews. It's interesting, even though Shesterkin is a young guy, somebody brought this guy up the right way, because he apologized for the goal he let up. He apologized. He goes, "Yeah, I shouldn't have let that in. I apologize to my teammates, to the crowd, to everybody." And then when someone asked him about, how the crowd was, he said, "I want to thank each and everybody in the crowd for supporting me through the good and the bad. It really means a lot to me." Like, it's a way you don't get a take like that from goalies generally. They're usually a little bit more guarded than that. And you could see that the relationship. Now, look, the Ranger fans always tend to be sided with their goalies anyhow. Lundqvist, they've all chanted the great ones that they've had. They've not all been great, but obviously the special ones, Richter. But even at this young age, at this young start of his career, he's already feeling that with the crowd, and the crowd feels that with him. And that can take you to a different place as a goalie, get you to play better, be more comfortable. So it's a good thing.
I just love how certain franchises, everybody complains about, it goes Mario right to Sidney Crosby, or Gretzky, and then there was a window, but then Edmonton gets McDavid. The Rangers, they go from Richter to Lundqvist to Shesterkin. I mean, these are there are franchises out there that in the last 30 years haven't had one franchise goaltender, and this franchise has had 3. So it's amazing. But okay, this is what makes me love playoff hockey. As the time ticks down to 0, Max Domi, sort of morphs his dad and cross checks Ryan Lindgren in the back, who Lindgren is playing injured. So I'm sure they're zeroing in on whatever injury Lindgren has. Lindgren takes a swing at Domi's leg with the stick, couple stabs with it, then goes after him. I think he gets the better of him in the wrestling match, but that was at the end of the game. And then the main event, Kev, Anthony D'Angelo starts mouthing off at the Rangers bench, and Gerard Gallant goes back at him. And I don't even want to say what Gerard Gallant was saying.
Told him to shut the F up.
So it's on. I mean, and now I just saw the quote here from Ryan Reeves. I'm going to do my thing, go run some people and get in their face, try and get the same result as last night, another win. So it's on. This is a battle royale.
Yeah, I guess. When I was a teenager, I really appreciated this stuff, but I know. I just don't know. I mean, it does impact the series. I mean, whenever you turn up the intensity, you have a different kind of series, and I think the Rangers, and purposely went out to try to get a team that's harder to play against, and I think that benefits them as well. But I just shrug.
Here's the take I got on it, because I ran down to go do the interviews, but I was catching it on video because I knew something was going on when I headed into the elevator. So I saw everything, and we were all watching it while we were waiting for Jorg Gallant to come out. And it was ill-advised for Domi to do that, because he really gave the Rangers and the Rangers fans like a rallying point now for the next game. And D'Angelo this is the one thing. I don't know what kind of offer Carolina is going to give D'Angelo, but it's not going to be for a ton of money, and it's not going to be for a lot of years, because Brind'Amour is having a hard time controlling him now, like everybody else, because D'Angelo, his worst trait is when something like that is going on, he's the next guy to pile on or to mouth off to the point where you wish he didn't, because there's just no point, like leave it alone. And those are the kinds of things that fuel another team, quite honestly. And the fact that this is his old team, he's got to go play another game there now. He's not playing his best series anyhow. He's always good offensively and moving the puck. His defense, people have shown the underlying stats aren't great. So, like, he's a guy that really should concentrate on his game, but sometimes cannot. And
what's interesting about that is, and a lot of people didn't know this, but he was friends with a collection of Rangers, including Adam Fox. Yeah. Like he is very tight with there was a small collection of guys that he hung around with as well. So it was interesting that he got into it with the Rangers. I disagree with you on one point. They want to re-sign him.
Yeah, but if they're going to go long-term for a lot of money, no.
I think they're going to pay him. I don't know what kind of term they're going to give him.
$7 million for 7 years?
Oh, I don't know about that, but I don't think he's worth that.
No, but I mean, with the numbers he has, I mean, he's worth more than 5. If he isn't D'Angelo,
I think they'd be willing to give him more than 5.
Okay.
So
he's going to say.
But term, the Carolina Hurricanes are reluctant to give term to anybody.
Right.
So
they gave it to Aho. They did give it to a few guys.
Wow.
That's their choice.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, Aho is a little bit different player.
They wouldn't give it to. They wouldn't give it to Svechnikov, and look how good he is. It's like
that's right.
They'll eventually do it when they absolutely have no other choice. But no, I remember this, and it's not the same management. Remember, this is the organization that signed Alexander Semin after he left Washington, but they continued to sign him to 1-year deals because they couldn't trust him. And then as soon as they signed him to a long-term extension, he got lazy again. So.
Yeah. But you are right about D'Angelo. This is the stuff that gets him in trouble. Is that he can't control himself.
Right.
So that series is going to be interesting, and like you said, Kev, if they even it up, then it's a best of 3.
Yeah.
Now, what I thought was the least interesting series got really interesting on Saturday night, and because of my good old friend Nazem Kadri. And let me say what I have.
By the way, before we get started, that whole thing is ridiculous. Throwing a water bottle.
Yes, but there's
if he didn't tell us there was a water bottle thrown, it wasn't obvious on TV.
Right.
No, but
he looked to his left, and then somebody took a picture of the water bottle on the floor. But okay, the history between Kadri and the Blues, and Russ was kind enough to point this out because I forgot about it. Kadri was the one who put Justin Falk out of the playoffs last year, the 8-game suspension for the high hit. Okay. I looked at the video, and this is the whole thing. I looked at the video. Do I think Kadri, based on his record of what he has done in his career, purposely knocked Calle Rosen into Jordan Binnington Yes, I do, because that's Kadri. Kadri, now he's a double-edged sword. This could potentially benefit Colorado because I think St. Louis with Binnington could possibly beat Colorado. But now with Ville Husso, based on the way he's played in the series, I think Colorado is going to win. You know, it was detrimental to the Leafs a few years ago with his suspensions. Okay, so I believe it was purposeful. Does that mean that the idiots who are the St. Louis fan base, some of them, should be lobbing death threats at Nazem Kadri? How friggin' ridiculous is that? I mean, this is hockey. This is sport. You don't lob death threats in any situation. I'm sorry, Kev. I mean, I couldn't believe when I heard that. I really couldn't.
Yeah, Kadri's reputation does get in the way here. I looked at that video and I saw it completely different. I really felt that in that case, that was one of those plays that just happened. You're driving to the net, two guys tangled up, you end up hitting it. You know, it didn't even you saw the potential there for injury, but I thought he was going to be fine initially.
And then he winced, and then he winced.
And then he winced, and then you thought, oh boy. I mean, it turned out to have terrible consequences because, you know, Binnington had really turned it around. But I just didn't see it in this instance. I'm not usually, you know, to me, Kadri's been a punk in his career, you know, and so it's hard to be sympathetic, but I didn't see it in this case. I thought,
well, Russ, and this is the thing, and Kev could be right, I could be wrong, but okay. I've covered Kadri since he was drafted in 2009, through his time with the Marlies, through his time with the Leafs. Let's just say on the ice, he doesn't always make the right decision.
Right.
And it was not something he could plot out because it was a second. But if he had the opportunity to drive to the net and, you know, get on top of Binnington because Binnington was playing so well, I think he was going to take that opportunity. And, you know, I don't think he purposely wanted to hurt him, but he ended up doing that.
I think at first I thought he took a beeline for Binnington, but he didn't. But he took a beeline for Rosen. People are saying he was playing the puck. There was no way he could get the puck. Matter of fact, there was no runway. There wasn't enough runway to get the puck. And he took out Rosen's leg. And once you do that and you're in that area, he knows that there's going to be contact with the goalie. There's no way for a goalie to avoid contact. And so I think he wanted to just rattle the whole situation and doesn't think about the consequences. And there are consequences. And that's what Kadri's like. He does a lot of things without thinking about it. Right. And that's the next team that signs him has to now think about that again, because while he is a really good player, this is the other side of him that could, you know, get him kicked out of a series too.
But now Colorado has a 2-1 lead in the series. They won 5-2 on Saturday. You know, Husso, I said to Russ in our group text, Kev, that, you know, not that he's thinking about that now, but the way Husso has played in this series against a really great Colorado team, you know, it may be costing him money in free agency in the summer. I think he's showing his warts. But
I think that's possible. Yeah.
The other thing that could affect Colorado down the line, Russ, is that Sam Girard was hurt in Game 3, and he's going to be out for the season. Now they're a deep team, but he's a guy who logs a lot of minutes, so that's a significant loss.
It's a significant loss. But I was watching Bowen Byram intently because he had those concussion issues. He does look much better now and more like himself. He can take an elevated role on, and they won't miss that much. They're going to miss some scoring from Girard, but Byram's got a lot of talent in his own right. So I think they can get by because of that.
All right. On the other series last night, well, I mean, if it's easier said than done, but if you can't corral Connor McDavid, you're not going to win the series. And I thought in the game that they won, even though it was 9-6, in game one in that series, Kev, when Calgary won, they laid the body on McDavid. Didn't wear him down because he was still fantastic, but to be more effective against them, I think you have to be physical with McDavid. And in Game 2 and Game 3, they haven't been physical at all because they can't catch him.
Yeah. Well,
yeah. Sorry.
I just think I don't care what you do. He's, the cliche is he's playing like a man possessed. Like he has just been phenomenal in this series. I mean, this is Gretzky-like, Lemieux-like.
Mm-hmm.
This is just, he's just taken over. He's, totally in charge of that series. And, I keep reading about Markstrom. That's not him. It's Connor McDavid. Connor McDavid is just.
I think Markstrom's confidence is a little off, though.
Yeah.
Well, but it's created by Connor McDavid.
Right. No, it is created by McDavid.
This happens all the time to goalies, where guys just get in their heads. And then because of that, Evander Kane has just been a beast. He's got 10 goals. He's got 10 goals.
Jay Woodcroft getting the last change puts out Kane, McDavid, and Draisaitl, and Calgary and Daryl Sutter had no answer for it. Even if they put out Goudreau, Kachuk, and
there is no answer for it.
There's no answer for it.
No, the one thing I give Sutter credit for, he kind of predicted this. Like he kind of said, we don't quite know what to do with Connor McDavid, and I think he was, I thought it was a message to his team, help me figure this out. And there is no answer. I this reminds me of the 80s and early 90s when guys used to take over series, and to me that's what this series is about. This series is about Connor McDavid.
Now, man, we talked about this last game, and I had said this was the reason I picked the Oilers in this series, because I was kind of wondering how the Flames were going to stop that top line now that McDavid did look better, and they can't. They're juggling around their defense. They haven't found the right combination, and they've spent so much time on that and taking penalties and spending so much time in their zone that their offense is almost derailed at this point. They have to get that back together.
Well, that you're right about that, and it's the second level that's also causing Calgary problems, which is they can't get their own, offense moving, and because if they started trading goals, they would be in much better shape. But we all thought this was going to be a goaltending series, and it really hasn't been, in my opinion.
No. Although you're going to bring up the hit, Mike.
Oh, yeah, in a second. I was just also going to say the loss of Chris Tanev before the series, because Tanev was on their top pairing with Anderson. The domino effect. We got Michael Stone playing 20 minutes a night. It's like Michael Stone is barely an NHLer anymore. And if you want to see how speed can expose a team, look at Gabranson and Zadorov out there against the McDavid line. He's going past them like pylons.
Yeah,
it's that bad.
Well, the problem with those guys is they're good shot blockers and they're good down low checking, but by the time the Oilers get into the offensive zone, they're already making a decision which corner they're going to go to, and these guys can't react. Like they can't get to it quick enough.
Now, what Russ was talking about was the hit on that Milan Lucic laid on Mike Smith late in the third period, and they gave him 5 in the game just to get him out of the game, because I think if he would have stayed around, it was going to be a bunch of that stuff. The announcement came out today. There's not going to be any supplementary discipline for Lucic. And honestly, I watched the replay about 6 or 7 times. Lucic, in a way, let up.
He did.
He did. Yeah.
So I don't think it wasn't like he laid out Ryan Miller years ago, which everybody in Buffalo remembers. But
but it's involuntary manslaughter. It doesn't matter. Like you've got the goalie in the trapezoid. Even if you try and hold up and you knock him into the wall, it's the same result.
Right. Yeah. Here's Russ's point magnified, because I've actually seen this telestrated. And they provided the avenues that Lucic could have taken to avoid the hit. And he had several options, and he chose not to take them. So even though it was not murder one, as Russ pointed out, it was still vehicular homicide, so,
The last thing that Calgary wants is Mike Smith to not be in net, although Mikko Koskinen is
they don't have any options,
Yeah.
I mean, what I couldn't believe is, has Mike Smith become this important to Calgary that somebody needs to take him out? Like, if that's where your thinking is, you've lost already.
Fair point.
Yeah.
Fair point.
So a couple news and note. I think pretty important news notes here. Brian Rust signs a 6-year extension with the Penguins at a little over $5 million a year. I looked at the structure of the deal. It's all salary, no signing bonus. It's front loaded, so it's very favorable to the Penguins, which is indicative, Kev, that Brian Rust wanted to stay playing with Sidney Crosby for the next 3 years or more.
Well, I thought it was a bargain for the Penguins. I did. I thought this was a very team-friendly contract. I think that gives them a chance now, particularly if they can talk Malkin and Letang into taking, either 1 or 2 years. You can still then pay them a regular rate. And it accomplishes, as you said, what Russ wanted, which was to remain with the Penguins. He kind of sent that message when he said, I don't want to rob anybody here. I'm not trying to, break the bank. I just want to get a fair wage. Well, if anything, I think he got shortchanged a little bit. I think this is a discount in my mind because I think he would have done better on the open market. I realize he's in his third.
Hoping that they'll come to terms with Malkin. That's what I think, because he is that kind of team guy. And
right.
I think the way Brian Rust has a career here, I think he realizes how lucky he is that he's gotten to play with Crosby, and Crosby's made him a way better player. Because Rust has become like their premier clutch goal scorer in the playoffs. Like he's not their best player, but he's their clutch guy.
And guys understand this too. I remember years ago Marty LaPointe signing with Boston and basically telling the media, if you read between the lines, he was saying, I'm really not this kind of scorer. I'm just not a really good team. And now I'm going to go to Boston and they're going to expect me to score. And, he seemed worried that he wasn't going to be able to score.
He had no problem taking the money.
Yeah, he took the money because it was offered.
I know.
But it was just a kind of a bad situation. Players know, that, the value of the guys they're playing with. And I agree with you guys that, Russ knew that. But I think this was a very good, signing for Pittsburgh. I think they got a good deal here. I'm sure Russ is happy with it too, but I think it does open the door for them to be able to do it. And look, they're committed to still winning now because there's going to be pain when they eventually strip it down. Why start that now if you don't have to? So
why you have Sidney Crosby still effective in his prime? I mean, maybe
still effective. He's one of the best players in the playoffs.
Yeah, maybe he's on the edge of his prime, going toward but he's still.
I think that's fair.
He's still one of the best. Still one of the top 5.
And Malkin played better than I thought he would be at this stage of his career because he's been really banged up. And he's 35 years old, and but his numbers are still there. So.
Yeah, Letang, this seems to be the outlier there, Kev. I mean, he's had injury problems his entire career. If he's got an opportunity to get 3 or 4 years,
and he really helped himself. He had a phenomenal year. Didn't he have 68 points?
Yeah,
like that's almost 70.
Nobody talks about this, but I really do feel like Pittsburgh probably feels like they've lost him anyhow.
Maybe. But
I think that year killed it because we all everybody's been saying Chris Letang's sort of losing it for like the last 3-4 years. And I remember saying to Eck this year, I'm like, this guy is still as good as he's ever been. It's just he may be a little bit slower. He may not get as many chances per game, but man, he can still kill you.
But you know what? I'm sorry if I'm a team out there, and the rumor out there has been Montreal, which I think would be a mistake because that great year that Letang had is fraught with peril for whoever signs him, because if you're paying him $7 million for 3 years in the middle of that, it could be a Patrick Marleau contract.
Yeah, but he plays so many minutes, you're going to get at least 2 good years out of him.
In the middle of the contract, he could be done, and you
have to do it, Mike. In this era, he is really like Sergei Gonchar, and probably a little better than Gonchar was when he was flipping between the team.
I would like to point out, because I did go back and try to research this, and I could be wrong on this because I couldn't search everywhere, but you just called it a rumor. It actually is not a rumor. I could find no reports of Letang. I only found speculation.
Okay.
I found people saying, well, Letang, and it was his agent, his rumor. I saw there was no Elliot Friedman or Pierre LeBrun or any of those people saying, I'm hearing all that. We've just had speculation. To me, that seemed far-fetched that Montreal would want to, pay him. Now, I guess length of contract would be the key. And I did want to bring this up. Boston may legitimately lose Bergeron. I think he really is considering retirement.
Yes.
And if that's the case, and generally when something like that happens, you're just at a loss. But this year, oddly, the Bruins might have some options because Malkin could be available. He's the same age as Bergeron. Now, they're different kinds of players, but you can still bring a star in to play with Marchand if you get him in. And you might be able to tempt him because you might be able to give him, $8 million on a short-term deal because you won't have Bergeron to pay. Or
three centers. Malkin, even though he doesn't play center as much.
Go ahead. You can do it.
Malkin, Giroux, and Kadri.
Yeah, that was the point I was going to make.
Yeah.
So Mike.
Yeah. I mean, no. I mean, usually you're right. Usually there's like one center who gets vastly overpaid because 6 or 7 teams are after him, and then there's not really a viable option. It's like the problem here, Kev, is that Boston needs 2 of them if Bergeron retires. One of the reasons why they didn't succeed is because their number 2 center was Eric Haula, and Eric Haula was a pale replacement for David Krejci. So if Bergeron retires, then you need a number 1 and a number 2.
Well, here's where I think they're going to try and fix a mistake. Even though Don Sweeney said recently we're not negotiating right now with David Krejci, I think when the World Championships are over, they're still going to make him an offer, I think.
Yeah, there's a Pasternak involvement in this.
Yeah.
That I think is going on. And also, the only report that's come out of Boston is a suggestion of maybe Jonathan Toews because they wanted leadership and a defensive presence more than they, were the offense.
You can plug in Toews at 2C and be fine. Yeah.
Yeah. And
it's 1 year. It's 1 year.
Yeah. Well, and the point I was going to make is that, you could probably get Chicago to eat, $3 million to make it palatable because they'd love, I'm sure, to get rid of the other 7.
Right.
So, yeah.
And
and
I saw they just signed John Beecher. They could look to put Beecher maybe on the 4th line. That makes then you could make Trent Frederick a forward, a winger instead of a center because they're hoping to get more goals out of him. He's better off the wing anyhow because he's got pretty good hands. So that kind of helps their 4th line situation, and you still got Taylor Hall. So.
Let me ask you this, Russ, about Beecher.
Yeah.
Because I think this is important because it reminds me so much of a guy that Joe Veleno. And the question about Beecher is, will he score? And, we've heard that about –
I think you know that. Like, the only thing Beecher's scoring is loose pucks around the net.
Yeah. He's not. You think he's not going to score? Okay.
I don't think he's going to score, but I know he's going to win faceoffs and hit everybody that's moving, and that's what they want him for.
And we're Boston is sort of falling short here, and I mean, Frederick really hasn't developed into what I think people thought he was going to be. Studnicka really hasn't developed into what people thought. They traded Anders Bjork. Zaboral. I mean, the development of some of their prospects really hasn't. They got rid of Donato. I mean, it's had a lot to be desired.
Well,
right?
I think Donato they made too quick of a decision on. I think Studnicka they've yo-yoed. I think Bjork they expected instant results, and when they didn't get it, they were like, "All right, look, we don't have time for this." And what I was going to say to Bill C is because of Beecher, they don't have to think about putting Frederick at center because I know they've had him on the wing, but I bet you they were thinking about putting him at center next year if they didn't have a center because he does play that too. But if you got Beecher there now, then you probably don't have to worry about that.
And their free agent signings in the offseason were bad. Nosek was not good. Foligno is probably coming to the end of it. Haula was
okay. If you get Taves, then Coyle becomes your 3C, right? Which is a lot better for him.
Right.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I was wrong about Donato, though. I really thought he was going to be a real impact player, and I watched him, and he's just not the player that I thought he was going to be. I mean,
he's not the player I thought he'd be either, but he still can score some goals. I mean, what did he end up with this year?
Oh, yeah,
he's had 4 teams in 4 years. I think it's
you still want him around. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I really liked him. I saw him in the Olympics, and I thought he was going to score.
Yeah, he had 16 goals. I always felt like he could get 20. I didn't think he was more than that.
I thought he would be a 20 to 25 goal scorer.
Yeah, well, he had
and
16, so maybe he still can be.
I don't know. I mean, how old is he now? He's got to be
25,
27.
27.
Is he?
Look it up, Russ.
26.
26. Yeah, that's
borderline.
I mean, he might have one season like that, but like I always say, Chris Draper scored 21 year. So
if he did,
Ryan Donato could play in the crease and let the puck hit him once in a while. He could get a few more goals too.
My all-time favorite Detroit Red Wings joke. At least once every day in the press box, someone say, "Chris Draper in on a breakaway. We'll be right back after this."
The other signing that caught me a little bit by surprise because it was so quick was the Maple Leafs re-signing Mark Giordano for 2 years at $800,000 AAV.
Well, I don't know the answer. There's got to be bonuses in there, right?
As of right now, no. I mean, at least that's
that's stunning to me. Now I know he wanted to stay there, but usually when it's something like that, there's bonuses, where you got a chance to.
But the problem is with bonuses and cap friendly, right now. It's a pending thing, so we don't know for sure. The problem is with bonuses is that can count on the bonus overage, and the Leafs are against the cap. Yeah. So that they may as well give him flat salary if they're going to give him bonuses because he'll probably achieve them.
Well, you don't know. You don't know. I mean,
right? But I mean, this is for a team that's tight against the cap. For a team that defensively, I mean, Giordano came over. He played really well on the third pairing. He paired with Liljegren. They worked great together. Whoever they put him with, he played well. He's not the Norris Trophy winner of a few years ago, but he really, tested himself very well. And Russ, the one thing I noticed is the contract is the same length as the remaining 2 years of TJ Brody's contract, who we paired with in Calgary. I know he wanted to stay in Toronto, and I knew if he was going to stay in Toronto, it was going to be for a low amount, but I didn't think it was going to be $800,000. I thought it was going to be $2 million.
No, this is
that's right. That's why I thought there was bonuses because I would have guessed.
It's a great signing. It is really Leafs friendly, but I still feel like, even though the Leafs have whatever they consider their core is and whatever it's going to be, they still need that Brian Rust kind of player where he's not your first go-to, your second go-to, but he's going to be that guy that once every couple games scores you a goal and gets you out of trouble. That's what they need to get this offseason, a veteran guy that does that. And unfortunately, that's not Spezza. That's not Wayne Simmons. That's not – and that's where they could really fix some of their bottom six problems. But they got to get a guy like that on a one-year deal from somewhere.
Well, and then they were able to do that with they got Bunting on a 2-year deal, but I will continue to say till I have no breath left that the only way that this team is going to advance is if they find a difference maker in the top six, that a guy who can play physical, a guy who can be a pain in the ass that they don't have right now. That Zach Hyman was that guy, but they couldn't hold on to him. And look what Zach Hyman is doing with Edmonton. They need that guy.
Unless you trade that for Nylander straight up, you're not going to be able to afford it.
Well, maybe. I mean, maybe you get it on a short-term deal. Like I said, I think you need to move out salary, and if it's not Nylander, it has to be somebody like Muzzin. And I just don't know what you
can't move Muzzin out. Honestly,
right.
He's the only defenseman on that team that knows how to win, truly knows what it takes to win. And even though he gets banged up, he's still really good when he's healthy. And so, you can't move Jake Muzzin.
And he was good in the playoffs. The last thing here, Kev, the news about Barry Trotz, I mean, is everywhere over the weekend. They're saying he's going to interview in Philadelphia. Winnipeg is obviously on the agenda. Vegas. It even popped up. They said that the Red Wings were interested in Barry Trotz. What do you think about that? Possibly?
Well, I mean, I just can't imagine that Trotz would pick Detroit because he's essentially going to be able to name his price and his team.
Sure.
And, he's 60 years old. So if I'm 60, I want to go to a team that's close in my, that's the way I would view it. But we'll see. I mean, $6 million is a lot to pay for a coach. So,
Well, let me ask you this, Kev. All Trotz did so far with the Flyers was just kind of make an appointment, but you don't know when he's coming. I kind of have this feeling, because you know how hiring goes. I kind of feel like after Winnipeg met, that when they knew he was going to Philly, that they already made him an offer, like that day before, and maybe Trotz is already mulling that over. I have no way of knowing. This is just me with a gut feeling saying, I wonder if they already offered him that $6 million and said, listen, we're going to give this to you before you have to worry about any of these other teams. If you like us, come here. And I kind of wonder if he's thinking about it.
Or I wonder if he's stalling to see what happens after the first round. If Colorado lost this series, would Bednar be whacked?
What about Florida? I mean, there's somebody that Russ and I follow who's a TSN reporter out of Ottawa that said, I wouldn't be surprised if Florida goes back to Joel. I would be surprised if they go back to Joel Quenneville. But if that's not a possibility, the coaches that are out there who have won Stanley Cups, you would think, Burnett's an experienced guy.
Yeah, I think it's possible that they would remove him if they lose.
I think so too. I think he's playing for his job too.
I also think Gary Bettman would have something to say about Joel Quenneville coming.
He would. I did want to say this about Philly though, because even on 32 Thoughts, there's some difference of how Marek and Friedman think about the Flyers. But Marek said that the Flyers don't seem like they're in a rush and are just going to kind of get to Trotz when they do, because they're trying to figure out what kind of team they want to be. And that is an unpopular thought in Philly, but it does check out with the way they've been doing this. I do like a Flyer show every day, and they've not been aggressive so far. They just came out with what they're looking for in a coach when they could have done that in December because they knew they weren't going to hire Mike Yeo full time. None of this has done anything. And then, they signed Ristolainen into a long-term deal. You don't know who the next coach is going to be. You signed Nick Seeler. You're giving him guaranteed NHL money, even though it's $750 or whatever. But
it's a two-way deal.
No, but it doesn't matter. You're still going to have to pay the $800,000 either way to him. Like, why did you do these things if you don't know what kind of team you're going to be?
Why would they have to pay him either way if it's a two-way?
Yeah. Well, because it's a variable contract, Russ. He's an eighth defenseman.
Yeah,
I don't think
he'll end up playing on the team. That's.
I don't think this position. I don't think
the Flyers aren't good enough to keep Nick Seeler in the AHL all year. That's another thing.
He's a safe net.
Like the Red Wings just signed Kampfer, who's been around the league a long time. It's a two-way deal, but it's $300,000 if he plays in the minors, which is big money to play in the minors, and that's how you prevent. You have a guy that can go up and down,
right?
And then they guarantee, and the reason you can't that high is the team isn't going to claim that guy in waivers, because if they send him down, they got to pay that, and it's guaranteed.
A better player than Nick Seeler,
Sealer's was a 2-year deal. The first year was one way. The second year is similar to Kampfer. It was like $325,000. That's the whole reason for that is so they can send him back and forth from the AHL.
Right.
Nobody will
that's
claim
their
him.
thought. But again,
nobody will claim him. Nobody will claim him. Yeah.
You watch. He played 43 games last year for the Flyers. He's going to play probably 30 to 40 games this year. But my basic point is, you already had signed Ristolainen into a long-term deal. You don't even know who's walking in the door and what system is going to be run here. And you've made some decisions here. That is not the best way to go about it.
Well, the whole thing with the Flyers is like, and we've talked about this, is the fact that they may be saying outwardly, well, we don't want to rebuild. They should be wanting to rebuild, because right now they have so many holes to fill that I don't think that it's plausible for them to plug all of them and be a contender for a playoff spot in the Eastern Conference. Is there a possibility that you got one side in the organization that says we should rebuild and the other side that's saying we should contend?
I do think there's a possibility of that, and that's another problem, that now they have all these voices that, Chuck's voice isn't good enough anymore. That's the issue.
Yeah, it's hard. And, the other issue too is, and this was brought up to me by, someone with a team who told me kind of off the record, I couldn't rebuild if I wanted to, because ownership is afraid what the fan base will react. Right. Even in Detroit here, which is hockey town, the season ticket base has eroded during this.
Yeah.
And that's a hard call to make for ownership because it takes a long time. Now you can do it in New York or Toronto, but we look what the crowd's like in Buffalo.
But you know what they could have done, Kev? They could have told their fans this year, hey, you know what? It's going to be a couple years till we're really competitive again. Not 5, but it could take 2 full years. So be prepared for that.
You can't. I don't think you can do a full rebuild in 2 years.
No, I don't think you would call it a full rebuild. But the idea is they're not intending on rebuilding anything, and they're saying they're going to be competitive next year. And it's nearly impossible based on the way the cap is and who you have locked up and injuries that's going to happen. So it wasn't a well laid out plan to begin with. They should have had a different plan.
All right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No. I'm done.
Okay. Good show, guys. We'll be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For Kevin Allen, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.